From the tea rooms of the early 1900s to modern-day cafes, tea has been a powerful connector for women to take time, come together, and exchange ideas. Some historians suggest what transpired in many of the tea rooms of yesteryear laid the groundwork for the suffragette movement, allowing women to gather, exchange ideas, start businesses, and change their place in the world. So what better way to empower women today than by gathering inspiring entrepreneurs and leaders to share their stories over a simple pot of tea? Each week, our amazing women will be on hand to guide you on your journey. So if you're ready to be inspired, come inside and grab a cup. It's time for tea. For many women, having it all, a high-powered career and a family, is the ultimate goal. But as many women are finding out, it can be a constant struggle. Anne-Marie Slaughter brought the issue to the forefront in her explosive 2012 article in The Atlantic, Why Women Still Can't Have It All. The article sparked a national debate on the issue of equality between women and men, work and family. She's now written a book entitled Unfinished Business, in which she tackles all of these issues. Anne-Marie, thank you so much for joining us here today. Now, I understand that the article and the book really came about when you were working for Hillary Clinton when she was Secretary of State and you were head of policy planning.
I was there for 2 years and I loved the work that I was doing. And I was commuting between Princeton, New Jersey, my home, where my husband and our 2 sons were, and Washington. And that had been a family decision that I would do that. But over the 2 years, my elder son essentially hit middle school, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, and started hanging out with the wrong crowd, not doing his homework, skipping class, ultimately got suspended from school. And I realized after 2 years that although I could continue and I was up for promotion, and there are only good jobs above the one I had, that I did actually have to make a choice. And it was the first time in my life that I'd had to choose. I had spent my life telling people, you don't have to choose between work and family. You can make it work, just try hard enough, and it'll somehow work out. But in this case, I realized I had to choose, and I went home. And when I went home, I then discovered what it's like when you make that choice and how other people look at you.
Because you were getting these looks like...
So it was very funny. I conducted a little experiment. I would tell people would say to me, why'd you come home? And I'd say, well, after 2 years, I give up tenure at Princeton, and that means giving up a lifetime job. People understood that. There was no problem. But a lot of the time I would say, I came home because we have 2 teenage sons and this will be the last 4 years that they're both at home, and I don't want to miss that. And when I said that, I could literally see that I was falling in the esteem of the person I was talking to. It was like, well, either she didn't do well in Washington and she doesn't want to admit it, so she's come home, or, well, I guess she's not really as much of a player as I thought, because a player would not put her family first.
So when you came up with the idea for the article, what was going through your mind?
Well, the starting point was just that I had been telling young women my entire life as a professor, as a role model, that it was just a matter of wanting a career enough, leaning in enough. Essentially, I was saying that, Sheryl Sandberg coined the term, but that was the way I thought about it. And I realized, wait a minute, if a woman like me with money and a lead parent spouse and every advantage in the world, if I can't make it work because of something that is completely beyond my control, in this case, a rocky adolescent, but for many women, a child with special needs or a divorce or parents who move away, whatever it is, if I can't make it work, then this narrative of just try hard enough is not accurate, and it's wrong to the extent it makes people expect to be able to do this and feel like failures if they can't. And so I thought, I'm going to write this article and we need to have another round of conversation because the sort of have it all narrative is just not right.
And your husband was really backing you up, he was, as you describe it, the lead parent. That's
Yes.
a term that not everyone is familiar with.
Yes, although it's a term I hope people get more familiar with. He was lead parent in the sense he has a full-time job, but he's a professor, which means he's flexible. And the lead parent is the person who's in charge at home. In other words, the person who's available when your child is sick, when you've got a school trip, when whatever happens that is unexpected, somebody has to be available. And that person is what I call the lead parent. And Andy was the lead parent. But my point is, even then, he didn't ask me to come home. But I felt, and I think he agreed, we have a child here who is making bad life decisions, and it is our responsibility as parents to do everything we can at this critical moment to turn him around, because it's not like a toddler. When they're teenagers, they can do things that really do affect their life prospects.
So what is the crux of the problem that exists today for women in the workforce?
Well, I think there are two critical problems that if we solved, we would get to real equality. And the first is we focus much too much on women and not enough on caregiving and the necessity of caregiving for everyone, right? For the young, for the old, for the ill, for the disabled, and that caregiving is not a woman's job any more than breadwinning is a man's job. And the first half of that we got. We understand that, it's not up to dad to earn an income. It's up to dad and mom, should they so choose. Often they don't have a choice. They just have to. We've done that part of the revolution. But the other half is, well, hang on, if breadwinning is mom and dad's responsibility, then surely caregiving is also mom and dad's responsibility. And I don't mean dad helping, I mean equally responsible. So if we think about that, then we understand that we discriminate against caregivers right now. We devalue them both monetarily and in terms of prestige, and that disproportionately affects women.
So it's really taking a look at men's role
Yes.
at this
Yes.
point.
Yeah.
And what can we do to include men more in caregiving, have them feel comfortable with caregiving?
Well, it's interesting. The best thing we can do is to give them paternity leave. Men who start out taking care of their children at the same time and in the same way women do, figure out pretty quickly that they can do it just as well as mom can. I mean, the reason we think mom knows how to do this is mom's the one who has to figure it out. When you have your first child, Andy and I figured it out together. I didn't know what to do. He's the one actually who did all the reading. I just sort of, went with it. But he was every bit as good a parent. He did things differently than I do. But having men involved, yes, the woman has to bear the child. And yes, the woman breastfeeds, although even there, lots of men can, give a child a bottle with pumped milk. It has to start at the beginning with the idea of equal responsibility. And then we have to just stop talking about these issues as women's issues. People are constantly saying to me, this is a problem for women and families. And I say, no, this is a problem for parents and families. And we reinforce at every turn the idea that it's mom's job, that it's a woman's job to raise children, to care for the elderly. And in my view, that's discrimination just as much as in the 50s and 60s saying it was dad's job to be a lawyer or an engineer or whatever worker he was.
So it seems to be a caregiving issue.
Yes.
Much more than a women's issue.
Yes. And in fact, if you look at women who don't have caregiving responsibilities, they do face discrimination in the workplace. I don't want to pretend that there's no unconscious bias. There is. There's still those issues. But women who don't have caregiving obligations are far, far ahead. They're earning about somewhere around 92% on a male dollar, whereas mothers are earning 70 cents on a male dollar. So I want to focus on care. And then, equally, if you're going to focus on care, then you have to focus on changing roles for men. And you essentially have to say women won't have it all until men have it all, right? That until men have the ability to be as engaged in their families as women have been, together with work that they care about.
Coming up after the break, how do we have the conversation with men about caregiving? And what steps can we take to change the culture? That's coming up next. So how do we communicate to men that they can be good caregivers?
Well, again, the first thing I think we do is we change our vocabulary generally. So, for instance, we always talk about working mothers, but we never say working fathers. And that's really telling because it says, well, we don't need to say working fathers because a father's place is in the office, so of course he's working. Whereas with mothers, we're still saying a mother's place is at home, so if she's working, we need an adjective. Of course, she was always working. It just means working for pay. So let's talk about working fathers. Let's talk about parental leave. Let's get women out of it. That sends a message to men that, of course, they are equally expected to participate. But then beyond vocabulary, there are all sorts of things you need to do. For young couples starting out, if they are assuming they're a heterosexual couple, if the man says, he's going to say, of course I support your career. And that's great. But that's not enough. What you have to ask him is, so if I get a promotion that requires me to move, will you move for me? If I get a big promotion and you've got one coming up, but mine is bigger, will you not take your promotion so I can take mine? You need to ask the questions that make clear the caregiving part, assuming they want to have a family, is going to be just as time consuming in many ways as their career, and somebody is going to have to make trade-offs. I mean, you can have 4 nannies and do it that way, but I think most couples actually want to be raising their children, and so you need to make clear from the beginning, hey, wait a minute, earning a living is our equal responsibility, also caring for our family is an equal responsibility. And the final piece of this, which is the piece that women have a much harder time with, is equality in the workplace has to go with real equality at home. And I always say, if you walked into your office and your boss said to you, I think you can do this job. I'm biologically better at it, but I'm sure you can do it if I micromanage you enough. If I lead a long list and I, call you every 2 hours to make sure you've done it. We would never put up with that, we women in the office, but we do that to our mates. We really do. So the other piece of this is to say to the man, okay, you're equally in charge, and that means he's going to do things you don't like, and he's not going to do things you want him to do. And that's because home has to be his domain too, and my husband and I have very different ideas about how to raise children. And I always assumed, well, I know, I'm mom. Actually, I think I know because I was raised by my mother. And who is to say that my husband's ways aren't just as good? And if I want to be able to be out there having my career, I can't run the home front. He's got to be equal at home, just as I think I'm equal at work.
But it also seems this idea of showing up at work, 9 a.m.,
Yes.
having your face there, being there until 6, 7 at night, and that we can't seem to shake that.
Right. We still are working in an industrial age economy where factories got going at a certain hour and the assembly line started rolling and you had to be there and you left when it stopped. We're in the digital age and work can be done in many different places at different times. People don't have to be in the same place together. The good news here is that parents don't have to carry all this water because millennials think that the way boomers and Gen X people work is crazy. They expect to work anywhere, anytime, anyhow. And elders, boomers of my generation, are changing the way they work. They're not going to retire, many of them, but they're going to work part-time. And that's really how the workplace has got to reinvent itself. And again, in California, the cutting edge of the digital economy, people understand this not as a caregiver issue, much less as a women's issue, but as a reinventing the workplace issue. So we are going to have to shake up some very fundamental ideas about work being a place you go at a certain time. And finally, we've got to get used to the idea that somebody who works around the clock is bad at time management. Right? When I look at people who are there at 10 a.m., when I look at people who are there at 10 p.m., I really think you must not be managing your time very well because I know full well that someone who was just as productive as you are got out of here at 6.
And these flexible programs seem to be cropping up at a number of companies here in the United States, but not everyone's taking advantage of them.
Well, so this goes back to men. right? What is happening now is just as I said, when I told people, if I left Washington for my family, I immediately became not a player, not a fast track person, not on the leadership track. And that's what's happening now. There are lots of policies on paper, but if you take advantage of them, you work from home one day a week, or you work part-time, or you have a really flexible schedule, you're then on the family track, not on the leadership track. And that's why men won't take advantage of these policies. My point is, you have to understand all those people are enormous talent, right? They're not less smart, less talented, less trained, less educated because they're putting their families first for a while. And the places that don't see that are losing their own investment and hemorrhaging valuable talent.
So if you are interviewing for a job and you say, well, hey, do you have this flexible plan? And they tout, yes, we have all these wonderful options. What else should you be asking?
The next question you ask is, and how many senior managers took advantage of those policies? And unless they can point to quite a couple, not just one token partner who was part-time, you say, well, it doesn't sound to me like this is really accepted in this workplace, and you make your own decisions.
And have you had any pushback on the ideas that you've presented so far in this book, or has it been positive?
I have gotten very largely positive responses. I think there's an overwhelming sense that, yes, this is right. Indeed, many women say to me, my mate really would like to go part-time, work 75 or 80% time, but he doesn't dare, right? So people think we can't make this culture change, either with respect to work or with respect to men. To which I respond, I grew up in an era in which it was still illegal for blacks and whites to marry, in which there were no homosexuals, period, the end. They did not exist. They were all in the closet. So I just don't believe that we can't make this culture change. And I think men are whole human beings too. They're not just, robot automatons who want to work all the time. They want to be with their families just as women do. And we just have to create the space for them to be able to do that.
Coming up after the break, we'll take a look at work-life balance and how women and men can plan for lifelong satisfying careers. Stay tuned. So when you were commuting from Washington to Princeton, what was that like, and what type of hours were you keeping?
Government hours are long hours. So what I would do, I'd leave the house at 5 a.m. every Monday morning. I used to feel like a thief sort of stealing out with my 3 men asleep upstairs, and I'd come back late on Friday. And a normal day in Washington was basically 6 a.m. till 10 or 11 p.m. Now, Hillary Clinton was a fabulous boss, and by Washington standards, she came in late and left early, meaning she came in around 8 in the morning, had her first meeting at 8:15, and left around 7 p.m. So that's a short Washington day. Now, she actually worked at home before she came in and at home after, but she did that so that people around her could get their kids to school and pick them up. Even so, at the level I was, top level State Department, we're working on the world schedule, right? And you can't change that job. You can't say, hold the revolution, Anne-Marie will be back on Monday. It just...
You sure?
It doesn't work. So, what I tell people is there are jobs that you can tailor and make flexible and all of that, but there are also jobs that really you can't. Very high level jobs that depend on external forces. And for those jobs, what I tell people is think about your career in terms of intervals. Think about going hard for a while and then slowing down. And actually, your family can adjust to that. If your family knows, okay, for this year, these 2 years, I'm not going to see much of mom or dad, but he or she is doing something very important, they can do that. Doing that for their whole childhood is another thing. So I don't want to suggest, well, gee, if Hillary Clinton had been a better boss, I could have made this work. That's not true. At the same time, I think, again, for the vast majority of Americans, Washington, meaning Congress and the president and state capitals, can make their working lives a whole lot better.
What do they need to do?
Well, join the 21st century, right? We are the only country among our peers in the world that does not have paid family leave. We're one of 2 countries in the world that doesn't have paid maternity leave, but we actually need family leave, maternity and paternity, and any other kind of family leave when a family member is sick or dies or you need time for them. And we need access to quality, affordable childcare and elder care, which again, our competitors in the world, Europe, Korea, China, they have these things. And they are profiting by allowing people to work and allowing people to invest in the next generation.
And something you take a look at in your book is that early childhood education. It amazed me how important it really is.
This was one of the great discoveries for me working on this book over the past 3 years, was looking at all the work on neuroscience and child's development. And now we understand that in the first 5 years of a child's life, you are not just teaching that child knowledge. You're not just the ABCs and numbers and colors and all that. You're actually shaping that child's brain and determining how much he or she can learn for the rest of his or her life. So that the investment on a national level in all of our children is the way to overcome the achievement gap. It is the way to raise the most productive and competitive citizens for the next generation. It is I talk about it as a national security investment and an economic competitiveness investment. And we should be saying to parents who are investing in their children, you're doing the most important work of all.
Because we have to value caregiving like we do breadwinning.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
I love this quote that you have in the book. You say, if we can actually teach ourselves to value competition and care equally, to think that managing money and managing a household full of other human beings are equally valued and valuable occupations, that's when we are on the way to equality.
Exactly. And the way to think about this is we've allowed women to work like men. But we still think that traditional women's work is way below traditional men's work. And we have kept men in the social roles they've always been in. So if we can value both, we can say managing money is all about investing in money. Managing a household is all about investing in others. Those are equally valuable occupations. Then we'll get to genuine equality.
And the last thing I want to take a look at is career advice for women. I love the interval training thought, because it gives hope for women that they can get back into the workforce after they have a child. Yeah. I mean, your thoughts on that?
Well, this is what I call phase 3. And eventually I'd like it to apply to women and men both. But realistically, right now it applies to women. So the way to think about it is that Hillary Clinton did not run for the Senate until Chelsea went to college. So after Chelsea went to college, she ran for the Senate. She ran for president, she became Secretary of State, she's running for president again. All of that in phase 3. And that means when your children are no longer in the house. And right now, there's a huge talent pool of women who are well educated, who started out on a career path and then had to make that care trade-off. But their kids are either getting close to leaving the house or out of the house. They've got 15 to 20 years of productive life ahead of them, right? Hillary will be 70 if she's elected. Janet Yellen, the head of the Fed, is 67. You know, as one woman said to me, how on earth, am I supposed to retire? Right? I'm 55 or 56 and I'm raring to go. So women themselves should think about, okay, here's my pre-care phase, here are some care phases, and then there's this phase where I am just, I've got wisdom, I've got experience, and I can contribute fully to society. And society has to recognize what we've got there.
How do you feel about your own life now?
Well, I feel great about the decisions I've made. My oldest son, the one I wrote about, just started college this fall, and he's at a great university. He is happy. That is just a wonderful thing. But independently of his life, I feel like I will look back and know that even though I'm always working and I always travel, so I've never been home in most people's definition, I know that I got the most out of this period of life when our children were still at home, and that is a very precious period. And I'm already very sad to see it, go slipping. We've now got one son left at home. So I feel like I've lived my values, and I've lived the values that we say we believe in for everyone. I just would like to see us walk that talk.
Well, thank you so much for joining us here today. You've really an inspiration, and I'm so excited to see the next 20 years for you. You're just getting started.
We're all just getting started. Thank you.
Thank you. That wraps up this week's edition of the Working Woman Report. Be sure to check us out in the social media world. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and of course, workingwomanreport.com. Tune in next time for more fantastic ideas and tips by our amazing women. Who knows? Maybe you're next. See you then.